Hi guys, Jack Adams here. I'm going to be responding to Austin's YouTube comments about the World Health Organization's funding and if the United States should be funding the World Health Organization. I agree with a lot of points that Austin made, but however I disagree that the United States should fund any money to the WHO for the reasons I will state now. I think the COVID-19 pandemic is the most important piece of evidence to explain why the U.S. has no self-interest in funding this organization that basically seems to be in the pocket of the Chinese Communist Party. Looking back to January 14th of 2020, the WHO was basically hand in hand with China on finding out the origins of COVID-19. And rather than having their own folks or people in the international atmosphere doing independent investigations on how COVID-19 originated, they trusted Chinese Communist Party investigators to tell the entire world that there were no proven evidence of human-to-human transmission for COVID. We all know that was a blatant lie and caused over millions of deaths around the world. We also see with COVID-19 where the WHO was not allowing Taiwan and Hong Kong to express any of their own opinions on the pandemic, where they only listened to China instead, which is not a very good situation for the rest of the world. Fast forwarding to February of 2020, the virus was well in the United States and had our first instance in Seattle on February 21st. And Seattle actually historically has a very good job of tracking flu and pneumonia, where we saw the WHO at this point was still recommending that most people in the world do not need masks. And we also realize now that at this point, there were 114 countries that already had the virus itself. And if we had been wearing masks at this point, then we'd understand that this would be a much different situation and many deaths would have been avoided. And it's kind of crazy also the WHO didn't even declare this a pandemic until March of 2020, where 2 months already went by and we realized how dangerous this disease was. Mainly, the United States is obviously at an international difference with China on foreign policy, economy, etc., but nothing more than COVID-19 and its origin. Mission-driven, World Health Organization honestly had no transparency, and they shouldn't have been so on board with President Xi, but rather they should have been working with the rest of the world to understand how this pandemic started. For example, when the United States government tried calling this virus the Chinese virus, the WHO was very quick to denounce this term, and anytime the Chinese government tried insisting that this was the United States virus, they were silent on the issue and were much more on board with China. China is also very much involved with electing WHO leadership, which is also a huge issue in our political interests going forward. And President Trump has gotten a lot of, scrutiny on his handle of COVID-19 by the WHO, and China is obviously to blame for this pandemic, where the United States funds over 15% of the entire WHO budget, and clearly that money would be going to different circumstances to keep our country safe. And with a world that's changing every day when going to more of independent, atmosphere, I saw Adam mentioned how he was nervous that if we pulled out of the WHO, then countries in the UK, etc., would be very disappointed in our leadership and would kind of fall into their own thing. I think the United States is the leader of the free world, and anything we do, people at the end of the day almost kind of agree with and kind of have our back, especially our own allies. So I don't really think that would be much of an issue. Obviously, the WHO has had some, positive motivations in their past trying to fight things like Ebola, HIV, malaria, etc. But clearly, their mishandling of the COVID-19 pandemic has ruined so many lives. And having actually contracted the virus myself, I realized how painful it was for my family and I. And no one's more responsible for this pandemic than the Chinese Communist Party and the World Health Organization. And for those reasons I just stated, I believe the United States shouldn't fund $1 to this very, very honestly corrupt organization.